Some weeks ago I made a video about a curiosity of the movie Predator, where Claude Van Damme almost ended up playing the title creature. If you haven't watched the video so far, look for it here in the playlist of the channel cause it's a very interesting trivia. But was doing that video that I started to think about the career of this guy, Claude Van Damme. All his action movies and how he ranks in the great hall of 90s action movie stars. And then you ask me, but Gus, you gonna talk about Van Damme again? Are you aficionated by this guy? Not really. In fact, not even in the slightest. I like some of his movies, but there are only a bunch that I revisit with time. But there are 3 movies of his that every time I look back I go, man, these 3 movies are actually very good. And I think many people forget about these 3 movies and only remember that Van Damme used to like to do the split and show his big ass. But I don't forget and I decided to make a video about this. My name is Gustavo, but you can call me Gus, and let's go! Since I am this obsessed movie buff, sometimes I do these lists of non-official trilogies that I consider the holy trinity of some topic. For example, actors like Nicolas Cage have a very epic trilogy in his career. The movies Face Off, The Rock, and Con Air. At the same time that Keanu Reeves also has Point Break, Speed, and The Matrix. This without mentioning the John Wick series. And thinking about Van Damme's career, I came to the conclusion that he also has a holy trinity in his career. And that starts in 1992 with the movie Universal Soldier, movie directed by Roland Emmerich, that later directed movies like Stargate, Independence Day, Godzilla, and many other disaster movies. This is one of the few Van Damme movies that has sci-fi in it. On the top of my head, I can think about Replicant and Time Cop, but this one is the best for me because it has an influence of Terminator. I'm pretty sure this is the Terminator of Roland Emmerich. And the story is about these 2 soldiers played by Van Damme and Dolph Lundgren, another great action star of the 90s. They both die in the war, and one of them is the soldier Luc Devereaux, and the other is the Sergeant Andrew Scott. But their bodies are used in an army experiment to resurrect them as killing machines that follow orders. But they are quite more invulnerable than normal soldiers. The problem is that in this resurrection, their minds are erased, so they can be blunt killing machines. Although Van Damme's character starts to have flashbacks of his old life. And this also happens with Dolph Lundgren's character. Van Damme remembers that he's a good soldier of the war, and Dolph Lundgren remembers that he was a sergeant that went crazy in the Vietnam. In the best Colonel Kurtz style, he started to kill innocent people in the war for pure pleasure. So while they recover their memories, they also recover their personas. Then Sergeant Andrew Scott rebels against his own program and takes control of it, starting a big chase after Van Damme's character and the journalist that he became friends with. And this is why the movie is genius. I think it's one of the most human movies of Van Damme, especially because of the whole backstory of the war and his memories remembering his old past before he died. So the whole movie is this long chase in the best Terminator style, with some very cool action set pieces like one towards the end of the movie that takes place in the desert with a prison bus, and Dolph Lundgren's character starts to throw grenades in the bus while he is in his cool-ass truck. And the scene ends with the supposed death of Dolph Lundgren's character, but he returns after that in the end for a showdown with Van Damme and a big fight on the rain, which is very epic. It's a great action movie, very well directed, but the thing that I like the most is the sci-fi embedded in it. And I think this plot had potential to become a much bigger and greater franchise from what ended up being. There were many sequels produced that went straight to DVD. None of them achieved the quality of the first one. And I watched all of these sequels. Sometimes I ask myself, what else can I do in my life that could be more useful with the spare time? But I think this mythology of the Universal Soldiers had a lot of potential for sequels exploring this idea. I think that as Van Damme's career went to trash in the following years, the franchise also went to the trash with him. So they didn't want to spend much money in the following installments. And Van Damme becomes a villain in one of the movies later, and the hero is actually played by Scott Adkins. So yeah, I love Scott Adkins, but that doesn't work. Then in 1993, we had Hard Target. And this one, although it has a more basic premise, it's also very interesting. The movie is actually based on a novel called The Most Dangerous Game, because it is exactly this. In the plot, we have a gang of mercenaries that use some homeless guys that had a previous connection with the army, that is, they were soldiers, to make a human hunt. For pure sport and pleasure, they hunt these guys, offering some money today in case they can escape, which in the case never happens because the mercenaries are always able to get them. And Van Damme's character, that his name is Chance Boudreaux, in the last movie his name was Devereaux, now he's Boudreaux, is a badass who comes to America and saves a lady who is searching for her father that was one of the victims of the mercenaries. So he gets involved in this plot and he becomes a target of the mercenaries. Actually, a hard target from the title. And this is the first American movie directed by the master of action movies in China, John Woo, one of my favorite directors, that right before this one directed a movie in China that is one of the best action movies ever, Hard Boiled. If you never watch it, I really suggest you do. And here he shows his masterful directing skills in the best way. Although the movie starts with not so much action, it really develops this plot of the gang of mercenaries, that the leader is Lance Henriksen, the iconic bishop from Aliens. And it really develops this character of Chance Boudreaux and his investigation about the gang until they have their confrontation. And then in the end of the second act, going towards the third one, that John Woo dances on the screen showing his masterful choreography. It's really badass scene after badass scene until the end. Displaying great stunt work and great explosions. When I mean great, I mean huge explosions. Bullets and sparks all around. And also the Van Damme skills that are very well used by John Woo, especially because the director has a flair for slow motion. So these two elements mixed are great. One of the best scenes in the movie is when Van Damme is facing one of the mercenaries and he shoots the guy millions of times with his gun, but to end him, he gives one of his famous roundhouse kicks that kicks the guy right in the face and tosses his cigar away. It's great. But there are many other scenes that are iconic in this movie, using all the John Woo's tropes, like villain and hero back to back, with a wall in the middle, pigeons, many pigeons. And not only Van Damme has action scenes in the movie. You can see that the actor Lance Henriksen has a scene where his suit is all on fire, and you can see that is the real actor doing the scene while he removes the suit and tosses away. So it's a real classic. And I think this is one of the movies that really establishes Van Damme as one of the action stars of the 90s. To wrap it up, in 1995, the movie Sudden Death was released, a basic ripoff of Die Hard with Van Damme. Although the 90s was famous for having many Die Hard ripoffs. After all, it's one of the best movies ever made. But I think this movie here is a good example of ripoff. Here Van Damme plays a much more calm and quiet guy. Now he gets an American name finally, that is Darren McCord. And he is an ex-firefighter that lived a trauma for not saving a person in his past, and now he works as a stadium security guard. Then he has his kids that he's taking to watch a game one night, but exactly on that night some terrorists invade the stadium and surrender the American vice president in his special cabin to watch the game, demanding some millions of dollars. If not, the stadium will blow up at the end of the game. Then Van Damme discovers this whole plot and he has to run against time to stop these terrorists and save the whole stadium. What I can say about this movie? It is fantastic. Actually, it's my favorite of the three. One of the things that I remember about this movie as a child is that the terrorists in the plot, with the leader played by the actor Powers Booth, are ruthless, really ruthless. They kill innocent people without any mercy. So you really hope for Van Damme to kill these guys as soon as possible. But the action scenes are very well done and very well distributed by the acts of the movie, using the stadium setting very well, because these movies is what I call the situational movies. Movies that we have one hero having to solve a situation inside a specific place. In Speed, we are inside a bus. In Cliffhanger, Sly is on the snowy mountains. In Passenger 57, Wesley Snipes is inside an airplane. So these situational movies have to use the places that they are set in a very creative way. And here the stadium is very well explored by the action scenes. We have action scenes in the kitchen, we have action scenes on top of the stadium, we also have action scenes in the game itself, with Van Damme having to dress as a goalkeeper to enter the game and stop it from being finished. Because the idea is that the game cannot finish before he solves the whole terrorist situation. That's why the movie is called Sudden Death, because there is a point when everything seems to be ready to blow up, but then one of the players of the teams scores a goal and ties the score, then the whole thing goes to sudden death, giving more time to Van Damme to solve the things. So the plot of this kind of movies has to be very well figured out, and here is not only that, but the whole script is very well put together. Every detail plays out later in the plot. Plus, we also have the iconic scenes, like for example Van Damme fighting one of the terrorist members, that is a woman actually, dressed as a penguin mascot. And to watch Van Damme fighting in his Van Damme way with a mascot dressed as a penguin, and this penguin actually kicks his ass during the fight, is pretty awesome. And I think from the three movies mentioned here, this is the one that he's actually a better actor. He really sells the whole thing of being a nice guy, and actually sells also his desperation to try to solve the situation on the stadium. And as one of my favorite movies of the childhood is The Mighty Ducks, any movie that uses hockey with action must be remembered. And this is it. This is my holy trinity movies of Van Damme. What do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Comment below. I know many people can say, but Gus, what about the movie Double Team? And Street Fighter? And, of course, Bloodsport. Like I said, they're all great action movies, but these ones that I mentioned are really a higher level of action. What about you? Do you also have a list of Holy Trinity movies that somehow connect to each other? Comment below as well. Don't forget to leave a like in this video if you are liking the content of Trashing with Gus, if you are a fan of action movies, horror movies, and animes and animations. Subscribe to the channel right now, cause this is your house. And this is it for now. Thank you very much. See you in the next Trashing with Gus, and bye-bye.